We've lost some beautiful people along the way. But I want to tell you, we still live with some beautiful people, and we're lucky. The thing I remember about growing up with my aunties and uncles, cousins and family is that family connection. Our family is stronger than the song, "We Are Family." The thing I remember about my grandmother is that she was nice, but she didn't mind offending someone if they got out of line. Depending on your age, if her words couldn't get your attention, the switch would. I guess it didn't matter because I've witnessed children, teenagers, young adults, and even old adults having to pay attention to mama's words or because of that switch. When we were young, we remember traveling to Fort Worth, to that house on the corner. You know the house where my Aunt Christelle lived. She had a beautiful laugh, but she didn't mind offending someone or some relative when needed. Well, she inherited that gene or trait from her mama, Mama Alice. I also remember as a youngster walking over to my Aunt Dean's house, Lou Dean living. Her house was located on Avenue D, by the park and by the swimming pool. We would walk over to her house to maybe just cut the yard or just to stop by to get some water on our way to play and swim. I remember she had a funny, unique laugh. But my auntie was very particular, so you had to be careful about touching things and being respectful at all times. I remember there were times when she would get loud and raise her voice. Well, there were times when she didn't mind offending someone or some relative if needed. Well, she inherited that gene or trait from her mama, my grandmother, Mama Alice. I remember during the summers, we would travel out to the country. We would go to Killeen and Kempner, Texas. We called it the country, but to the cousins, it was like Six Flags. We would spend so much time playing with our cousins. Like I said, it was better than Six Flags. We would go out there and visit my Aunt Opal and Uncle Taylor. Man, it was so much fun. Rest in peace, Uncle Taylor. As a matter of fact, Uncle Taylor gave me one of the best whoopings that I ever received. And I'm grateful. But the truth is, it was Mark's fault. Come on now, don't get distracted. But back to my cousins. We would play and compete against one another. Many times it would be the lefties versus the righties. After a while, we would start arguing, cheating, and almost fighting. I remember my Aunt Opal would come out and set us straight. She would give some strong words and dangerous advice if we didn't fix it. I noticed she didn't mind offending us with the words, threats, or the switch. She didn't mind offending someone or some relative when needed. Well, she inherited that gene or trait from her mother, Alice Pleasant. I remember my Aunt Lee and Uncle Raymond. They would come to visit. They lived far away, so we couldn't visit with them as much, but a couple of times a year they would come home to Temple and visit the family. I noticed when my Aunt Lee and Uncle Raymond would come to visit, I noticed when my Aunt Lee arrived, it seemed that she had been there every day. She fit in and knew where everything was. She knew where the spoons, forks, and the blankets were. She even knew where Mama kept her emergency money cup, located in the back of the cabinet, that she would slip a little cash into. I also remember if the children were playing too loud or running in and out of the house, she would let us know without hesitation. She didn't mind offending someone or some relative. Well, I guess you know what I'm about to say. She inherited that gene or trait from her mother, Alice Pleasant. I also remember my Aunt Mayella. She always lived in big, giant houses. Some of the houses were 2 stories, 3 stories, maybe even 4 stories, it seemed. She would let us run in every room. She would let us play upstairs and even play in the attic. There were so many rooms, we would play hide and seek and would eventually quit after about an hour because we couldn't find anybody. Most of the time, my Aunt Mayella would be in the kitchen cooking and cleaning chitlins or something off the pig. She had a beautiful, unique smile and a beautiful, unique laugh. But you know what? That laugh would come to a screeching halt if she witnessed some disrespect along our running path. She didn't mind getting loud and cussing to get our attention. She didn't mind offending someone or some relative if needed. She inherited that gene from her mother, Mama Alice Pleasant. I can't fail to mention my Uncle Ricky because he was so picky. It seems that he was born edgy, aggressive, and brave. I will never forget the time that he enlisted me to drive him to a hot spot about 30 miles away. I was driving at 2 in the morning at the age of 10. Like I said, I admired his bravery. I'm sure he inherited that bravery from his mother, Mama Alice. The next 2 don't require reflection because they are here in front of us. Uncle Pappy, C.D. Franklin, and Uncle Kite, Roger Kendrick, and Uncle Roy Franklin. Well, if you know them, you know they don't have a problem telling you to get your act together. We are lucky to have them in our lives. Raise your hand if you feel that you're grown and that you understand life. Go ahead and raise your hand. Well, I want to tell you, I can hear my Uncle Kite telling us right now. Just because you're grown don't mean you can't be wrong. Watch out. You see, these great men are talkers and doers. They don't mind telling you about an easier path, but they definitely don't mind offending someone or some relative to get their attention, or if they need it. These great men inherited that gene or that trait from their mother, Alice Pleasant, my grandmother, Mama Alice. Well, let me talk about my Aunt Belle, Ola Belle Kendrick. My Aunt Belle has the most unique personality of anyone I've ever met. She's always ready to laugh or to bring a laugh. She would spend the night with my mother when my mother wasn't feeling well. Thank you, Aunt Belle. I love you. But before you get sad, remember Aunt Belle already raced to provide words that would make you laugh or make you glad. She's got a cold-blooded laugh to wake up the relative if needed. I want to tell you, she doesn't tolerate disrespect. Well, she inherited that gene or that trait from her mother, Mama Alice. Well, let me mention my Aunt Faye, Alice Faye Grays, and Uncle James. Let's pray for Uncle James. I remember the time when I was young, I would confuse my Aunt Faye with my own mother because they look so much alike. Even today, I get confused like she's my mother because she still calls and she talks to Tiny 2 or 3 times a week, just like my Aunt Opal. Calling even on my cell phone to check on me, especially when I'm not feeling well. I love you, Aunt Faye, and Aunt Opal, and all my aunties. I'm so grateful for that. But as generous and kind as my Aunt Faye is, she will stop in her tracks if she sees something wrong or something disrespectful. She has a look that will get your attention. After that look or after that stare, many times words are not needed. Then you will get the command and the demand. Fix it. Straighten up. You know better than that. You see, my Aunt Faye don't mind offending someone or some relative if needed. Well, she inherited that trait or gene from her mother, Alice Pleasant. My mother, Leela Etheridge, she was a soft-spoken woman. She was soft-spoken until she would get fed up. I have inherited many of her traits and genes. I still fold my towels in 3 folds because that's the way she taught us. I get up and cook breakfast with both scrambled eggs and over easy eggs, just in case someone like a different choice. I do that because that is the way she taught me. I get up and I wash my clothes without complaint because she taught me that way. My point is, when you've been taught, life gets better. I didn't say I was perfect. Let me say something. I also remember taking shortcuts on my chores. Joel and I had to rotate washing dishes, the pots and the dreaded silverware and the dishes. There were many times I would wash the pots first, leaving all the other dishes to be washed in greasy dishwater. Let me say something. If you wash the dishes in greasy, dirty dishwater, no matter what, the dishes will still be dirty afterwards. My mother wants me to tell you that if you're living a dirty life inside a dirty environment, it's impossible to get clean. Well, after leaving a path of half-done chores, like the dirty dishes, the stinky trash can full of trash, but pushed down so I wouldn't have to take it out, 3 days of sweaty socks under my bed, the dirty ring around the bathtub. I might not need to admit this, but the pee on the bed sheets that I would blame on Tiny, she would become unglued. She would become unglued until I would get things right. She didn't mind offending someone or some relative if needed. Well, she inherited that from her mother, my grandmother, Mama Alice. Let me add something. If one of these jewels that I've previously mentioned has offended you during your lifetime, consider yourself lucky. Get over it. Well, today I may offend, and I will not pretend. Some people take offense when you talk about God and salvation. Some things I may say may slip out, but I want you to know it will be intentionally offensive to someone or some relative. You see, I have a legacy behind me to be brave, inspiring, and offensive. Let's go.